And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. Hope you all had a great weekend. We hope we have a great show lined up for you today. We are brought to you by our friends over at Deace Medical. Did you see the story? I believe it's coming up in Aaron's montage in case you missed it, but a little preview. One of the COVID mafiosos admitting, hey, while we locked you all down, we were just having wild sex parties. Is anybody even shocked at this, actually? No. What I would be shocked by at this point, though, is if there is anybody in this audience that has not taken advantage of the Deace case, given all these kinds of stories that we're no longer shocked by. These are the people making many of the medical and healthcare public policy decisions in America, and they cannot be trusted. So you can trust Deace Medical to give you as much autonomy as possible when it comes to your health. I mean, we can't, prescribe drugs to ourselves. We can't operate on ourselves, so we are all somewhat vulnerable to what has become of the system. But as much agency and autonomy as we can claim, take advantage of it with the Deace case. Make sure you get a backup of venerable medications, some of the most famous in human history. And then also you can expand it to a lot of the medications that you need. They've got an evolving and expanding repertoire and menu of customizable options with the Deace case as well. Go to Deace.com, J-A-S-E, just in case your med is the next one that they're saying is too dangerous to take right when you need it the most. That's Deace.com, J-A-S-E, and use the promo code Deace for a discount. Deace.com, promo code Deace, J-A-S-E at Deace.com. All right, coming up at the bottom of the hour, we'll be joined by our good friend Bob Vander Plaats. We will, next hour, try to separate fact from fiction as much as we can on two topics. Tiffany Justice of Moms for Liberty was just on the ground in Springfield, Ohio. And she's going to join us here next hour to tell us what she saw and heard with her own eyes and ears about what is and is not happening there. So that's coming up next hour on the show. And then there is some early voting data in from Pennsylvania, the state that a lot of people on both sides think will be the determinative state in the upcoming election, which is now just 6 weeks away. We're going to try to separate fact from fiction on that data as well, because we're in the stage now of the campaign that it's going to be really hard to find truth. It's really hard to find truth in America as it is. But now that we are in the final stages here of Operation Get Shorty, the fog of war has fully set in. And you can look at the same exact piece of data or stream of data on a given basis, and depending on which side's X feeds you are following and looking at, have a completely different spin on that piece of information, what is, it isn't true. So we're going to go through some of that coming up here in the final segment of the program. But before we get there, let us begin, as we always do, with what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by asking for more assassins. I know we're way past the point of being shocked by the grotesque nature of the Department of Justice, but what they did this morning just may take the cake. The DOJ released court documents for pretrial detainment against would-be Trump assassin number 2, Ryan Routh, and with it released a letter Routh wrote complaining he didn't get the job done on Trump and promising $150,000 to anyone who would assassinate him. Routh writes in his letter, quote, "This was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I failed you. I tried my best and gave it all the gumption I could muster. It is now up to you to finish the job, and I will offer $150,000 to whomever can complete the job," end quote. The letter was not actually found in Routh's possession, but in a box Routh had given a friend recently. After learning of the attempted assassination, that friend opened the box and turned over the contents of that box to the FBI. Incredible. Checking in on Joe Biden.
Who am I introducing next? Who's next?
Tim Walz, your thoughts.
We can't afford 4 more years of this.
And now something I allowed to slip through the cracks last week. My bad. Dr. Jay Varma was caught on hidden camera by Louder with Crowder. Jay Varma is considered the chief architect of New York City's draconian COVID lockdowns. Here's what he said on that hidden camera.
I actually was the one who convinced the mayor to make it a mandate.
Like, New York City found out that you're having sex parties during COVID?
Yeah, it would have been a big deal. Yeah, it would have been real bad. We went to some underground dance party underneath a bank in Wall Street. And we were all rolling, we were all taking Molly, and everybody's high. And I was so happy because I hadn't done that in a year and a half, a year or whatever. And but I was looking around being like, I wonder if anybody sees me living differently. Because this was not
Wait, when
COVID
was
friendly. The only way I could do this job for the city was if I had some way to blow off steam every now and then.
Dr. Varma has since admitted to media he broke his own COVID rules during the pandemic. So far, nothing has happened to him in terms of accountability. Journalist Cheryl Atkinson interviewed Donald Trump, and the duo discussed the COVID jabs, among other things.
Do you think that maybe they were approved too fast? And in hindsight, based on what we know now, what would you have done differently?
Well, I think they're doing studies on the vaccines, and we're going to find out, and it'll come out one way or the other. But I really had a mandate to get vaccines done, and I got them done very quickly in record time. I have a friend of mine who said to me, why don't you talk about the vaccine? You've saved hundreds of millions of lives all over the world. Don't talk about it. But if you go to Pfizer, if you go to some of these companies, they have charts and they have all sorts of statistics. And I say, why don't you release those statistics? Let people know. I think I did an amazing job with COVID. I never got the credit for it.
Memory hold story of the year so far is probably that one time an ocean liner just plowed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore and crippled a critical overland transportation route through the Northeast. Memory hold story of the year until this weekend when the FBI announced it conducted a raid on another ocean liner from the same company involved with the vessel that caused the bridge collapse. The FBI didn't say what they were doing or why they performed this raid. The Arizona Supreme Court unanimously ruled Friday that nearly 98,000 people whose citizenship documents hadn't been confirmed can vote in state and local races. They were going to be able to vote in presidential races anyway, regardless of that ruling. A rare poll update. One of the most anti-Trump biased pollsters out there, the New York Times Siena poll, has Trump winning Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. Scott Rasmussen of RMG Research has Trump losing independents to Harris by 5 points nationally. Make of that what you will. And finally, a masterclass on journalism. Here's Axios with Al Gore just this morning.
We're out of time. I do like to end with one fun thing. You've been in the public eye for so long. What is one thing that you don't think most people know about you?
At this point, I'm not sure there's anything, boy, what is that? Let's see. I'm not sure that there's anything that I can...
Well, what was the last song you listened to?
Let me go back to your first question, because I think that most people don't know that I've got 1,000 solar panels installed on my farm.
That's true. That's true. From comments to our stories, I can tell you that is very true. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. And
thank you for what you do, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at realestateagentsitrust.com. If that is you, and you are thinking to yourself, I am thinking of getting involved in this current real estate market with the cut in interest rates. If that's you, make sure you go in with an agent you can trust. Where would you find them? Over at realestateagentsitrust.com. That's where you can go. A lot of times you'll find an agent from right here in this audience that has the exact same value system that you do. And you'll find them over at realestateagentsitrust.com. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, guys, let's try to touch on a few of the things within Aaron's montage. And let's I got to tell you, just watching all of that, it's just like, oh, man. I do this for a living, and there are even days where even I am like as calloused and jaded as you get when you are in the soup daily, where I'm just like, man, I don't even know where to start. All right. Let's start here. The manifesto letter from Ryan Routh. And I just had this pop into my X feed. I had actually not heard about this until Aaron mentioned it to me about 10 minutes ago. I did not hear about this story. And as I was getting caught up on stuff here at the last minute, see what's breaking right before we went on the air, I saw this post on X from Matt Walsh over at Daily Wire that I think perfectly encapsulates my own thoughts on this. Matt writes, they didn't release the Covenant Christian Shooters Manifesto because they were allegedly afraid it would inspire more shootings. And yet within a week, they release a letter from Trump's would-be assassin where he openly encourages more shootings and then offers to pay for them. I mean, is that essentially a DOJ Craigslist ad, guys?
Of course.
I mean, how else would we take that? I'm asking, how else, should that be taken?
The more pressing question, yet again, is this is just the 666th example of, okay, America, are you going to connect the dots or not? Because of course you're right. But do we care? That's the real question. Because what you said, the reaction we have to that should be the reaction of a healthy American republic that says this is nuts. But now now Steve, transition into the polling and make sense of the polling in light of what we're talking about, because you can't, because it's insane.
So let me play devil's advocate for one moment. Can I?
In this case, probably literally, so go ahead.
If the FBI didn't release anything about Ryan Routh, wouldn't we be on here saying, wow, they're stonewalling, we're not getting any answers to questions? Isn't that our reaction? I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Sure, of course it is. Of course it is. But this is indicative of what happens when the social compact in a culture is broken.
Correct.
In that you run into double standards like what Matt is articulating.
See,
here,
that's the first thing.
There's no justification.
That's the first thing I saw on this morning was Walsh's tweet about it, and that's exactly how you have to sum it up here. There's absolutely no standard whatsoever. It seems like, anyway.
Well, there's. I'm not saying this is the standard. I could be wrong, but the only possible standard here. Well, there's three possibilities. One, just complete and total incompetence dealing with different layers of government. And I'm just, I don't remember whose political law it is, never attribute to malfeasance when incompetence will do. That's until the social compact is broken. And that's when you're not dealing with open spiritual warfare as we are today. I mean, these are the same forces at work here in both places. So, but that's still a possibility that you can leave that on the table. You can leave it on the table that this is just complete and total incompetence. That's one possibility. Another possibility is we're dealing with two different levels of government here on some level, state and local versus vis-a-vis federal. And the feds, because of what you just said, Aaron, are just like, well, we got to put something out there. We're getting killed. This is the second one. All right, we're running out of fig leaves here. Okay, that's a possibility. If you're looking for a consistent standard, here's what it would be. And it's at least off the top of my head as of right now here, 13 minutes in the show, the only consistent standard that I think can equivocate the juxtaposition that Matt is articulating here. In each case, releasing or not releasing lined up with the agenda of the narrative of the spiritual forces at work in both situations. Not releasing the Covenant Christian shooter and her agenda, not releasing it and I can't remember, was it a he who thought he was a her or a her who thought he was a he? We have so many trainee shooters, guys, I can't keep them straight. Do you remember which it was here?
It was a her.
That's what I thought. Okay. So in this case, not releasing her manifesto, which after it eventually came out, had everything we anticipated was in there all along, obviously would have fed their narrative as opposed to feeding ours. And that's why it had to stay hidden until it didn't. And in this case, releasing a manifesto that's a help wanted ad for more, ham-fisted wannabe assassins, or at this point, C-SPAN callers, just people randomly calling into C-SPAN, hey, I'm a veteran and I think we ought to shoot Trump. Okay. Yeah. I think that fits the narrative. They're trying to kill him. And we just did this topic on the Deace group Friday. True or false? They're just trying to kill him, guys. So those are your three options. You're welcome to choose either of the three that you want. None of them are really all that particularly comforting. I think most likely it is the third option, only because it lines up with a modus operandi we see everywhere, including the story about the harbor bombing that you had in there as well. Okay. Things get memory hold when they line up with the spirit of the age, when they don't line up with the spirit of the age's narrative, guys, and then they get exposed and opened when they do. Period. End of sentence.
Yeah, and along the lines of our people going to connect the dots, I'm confident that the powers that be believe the people won't. This is happening a little bit more than a month out from the election. So they'd be even more circumspect if they thought this was a loser. They're putting this out there because they actually think, and I think they're probably right, that a lot of Americans think people trying to kill Trump is like him issuing mean tweets. It's just messy. It's icky. It gets in the way. It makes me feel uncomfortable. Can the guy who they're trying to kill please exit stage left so I can have a normal life again emotionally? I honestly think they might be right because we're that broken as a people.
All right, well, that brings me to the contradictory polling data that Aaron cited in his montage, and I'll tell you about that in a second after I tell you about our friends at Relief Factor. If you've been dealing with chronic pain for way too long, that is likely because of too much inflammation in your body, and if that's you, yeah, you could take pills, drugs to try to, mask the pain. But then one day, a group of doctors got together and they got sick of prescribing drug, meds, especially at times because they can have side effects to them. And they said, what if we could come up with something drug-free, some kind of supplement that would go after the inflammation in these joints that is the likely cause of the chronic pain. And that's something, by the way, is Relief Factor. Now, there's no guarantee it'll work. Over the years, 1 million people have tried the 3-week quick start. Over 70% of them saw such great results that they stuck around with the product long term. So what do you got to lose for $20? Why don't you see, if you don't see a difference in your pain or less, you try the 3-week quick start, 70% odds, you're going to like those odds and like those options and outcomes when you go to relieffactor.com. Again, that's relieffactor.com. $20 for 3 weeks. Why not see? You got nothing to lose, just $20. Relieffactor.com. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of days like this. And I think Scott Rasmussen is, again, for the 7,000th time, no longer owns Rasmussen Polling. He sold it 10 years ago. All right. So RMG Research is his own private company that he does now. All right. And I've had multiple communications with Scott Rasmussen over the years, going back to when I even worked locally in broadcasting, and found him to be an extremely credible guy. But I am just telling you right now, if Kamala Harris wins independence by 5 points nationwide, we are not going to win. I can just tell you that. It's not going to happen. On the other hand, the New York Times Siena poll, as I have pointed out to you, with the data that I have, that I keep track on who's accurate with these polls, particularly in the Trump cycle, and who is not. And the New York Times Siena poll is one of the worst. Their projection is the one that gave Trump, or I think Hillary, 92% odds of winning in 2016. They helped to break the Real Clear Politics polling average in 2020, which was the worst year ever for the RCP average, which debuted in the year 2000. So with them coming out today and saying that they've got Trump with leads that, I don't know. Are they outside the mark? See, I don't even know what that is now. I don't even know what it is. I don't. Okay. But leads that are at least hovering on the outskirts of the margin of cheating, maybe, in the Sun Belt states. And the reason why that matters, we're going to talk about Pennsylvania, guys, later on in the show. But you don't get to the Pennsylvania round of November Madness if you can't win those Sun Belt states. If your name is Donald Trump, you don't get to the Pennsylvania round. Kamala could lose all 3 of those states. And if the Rust Belt states do what they've done since 1988, and that is all vote together, there has not been an election since 1988 that Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania did not all vote together. So if they continue to do that and they're blue, as they have been in all but one election since 1988, and that was when Trump won in 2016, when he won all 3 by the slimmest of margins. So if she doesn't have to win Arizona. When I mean by Sun Belt battlegrounds, I'm talking about Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. She doesn't have to win any of those. If she wins one, it makes the electoral map for Trump much more difficult than it already is. All right. Now, if Trump wins all 3, though, Then if he can just uniquely pick off Pennsylvania, he wins the presidency. So if I'm the Trump campaign, you know, I am going to maximize that white pill. Like we talked about late last week. Every time you get an opportunity, man, who knows what's true, who knows what's not, who knows how many people, even when you're in the middle of a cold civil war, even still want the truth, okay, because we're playing a game of survival and existence right now. So whenever you get something that you don't have to contrive, that can white pill people and give them confidence and momentum that you can seize, we just talked about this late last week, I would do so. And I would absolutely be, if I were on the Trump campaign, I am making sure everybody, every media contact we have on the right, everybody, whether it's direct or tertiary, is white pilling our people with those New York Times Siena polls, because that has not been a pollster that's been very kind to Trump during his entire political ascendancy and era here. And him winning those 3 states would go a long way to improving his chances for the presidency.
Yeah, I don't even think either campaign. I think both campaigns, actually, if you just look at their actions, words, I think they're just as confused and or schizophrenic as the rest of us. Just looking at the Kamala campaign, this is a story that we haven't really covered. There have been numerous outlets where you can go and they've debunked the story as well. But the story that was just an out-and-out plant in Georgia about the mother who took the abortifacient and she died because of it. That was a total plant. That was a total op from the left. That was in Georgia. Okay, they're trying to focus on Georgia, dropping Oppo research at this late hour on Mark Robinson in North Carolina. Also probably an op. So they seem to think that their path to victory is like Georgia, North Carolina, something else. When it comes, and they're still asking for a debate, is that because they are scared, or is it because they know that it's absolutely a controlled environment where she can't lose? I don't know, and I don't think the campaigns know either. I mean, it's just a chaotic landscape right now, and environment, and it's hard to make heads or tails of it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I think it's time to start asking the question, and I remember asking this with Josh Hammer before about, you know, legally going after some of these pollsters. But really, I've never seen, again, Steve is a data guy. If it's there, he'll find it. But the more polling we have, the more confused we get. I've never seen Steve in my entire life look as like, when it comes to data, as he just did. I think that's like, this is, we need to ask ourselves serious questions about the degree of legality, and I mean it, that we should allow this stuff. This is chaos, and I think it's purposeful in the name of so-called objectivity. Trust the science. It's the same garbage. We're getting more and more confused in the name of science, data, objectivity. This is a problem. And I think after this election, we need to do something about it. We're not getting into the bottom of things, and I think it's because we have too much of this, not because we're just like not quite getting it right yet.
I absolutely agree that it's purposeful. Yeah. If not from the part of the pollsters, it is absolutely spiritually purposeful.
I agree. I mean, and I can just tell you. I think there's going to, in our audience especially, people are going to scream, don't focus so much on polls. But here in the broader audience, guys, I'm just telling you, I don't know whatever week it was that Nate Silver's forecast first flipped to Trump. It's flipped back to Kamala now, I think, but I don't know. But that article was like the most read article at the Blaze that week. I go back to May. I had last May, May of 23, just as the caucus cycle was getting underway. I had a long conversation with a very well-known Washington, D.C., major corporate media outlet political reporter who I'll keep off the record. And we were just sitting down having an off-the-record conversation, comparing notes about what I'm hearing from my side, and he's hearing from his side. And he just flat out told me, listen, we have the least amount of confidence in the accuracy of our polls that we've ever had. It's the most expensive content for us to produce. It's how expensive these are. Even when we're trying to do them fairly, and sometimes we are, but the reality is the response rate is so erratic and unpredictable, we have no clue. So why do we keep doing it with all those variables? People eat it up. It's what they want. And
it directs politicians in the direction they want them to go.
That too.
If lying is not a sin, then ultimately you will say and do and become anything in order to win, which is why this whole environment looks more and more like the sports world. Just win, pay the kids, do whatever you got to, join this conference, whatever. We just got to win. That's what this is for. We are being put into a trance.
But it's a trance that people want, is the point I'm trying to make. And it's on both sides. People want to fetishize these polls and these horse races. And you mentioned sports, and I mean, I have been saying for years, I never left sports talk radio. It took me a few years to figure that out when I got into this side of the business, that I'm doing the exact same show I did before. It's just the stakes are higher, the team names are consistent, the quarterbacks change, but it's the same thing. And people are much more interested in the horse race aspect of things than the introspective and critical thinking aspect of it. And that's the same thing here. And the reality is people eat this stuff up. And for the right, they become huge distractions to us because we already are not as devoted to the causes as they are. Well, let me pause for a second. Some of you are like, Steve, you're not going to talk about this New York City COVID commissioner? Not really. No. Why? Nothing will happen. Any previous era of America would have put that guy on capital trial for his life. Any previous era of America would have that guy on trial for his life right now, with a noose and a gallows at the end. All that's going to happen is, and God bless them for it, they did the work, so they deserve it. All that's going to happen is some really cool engagement numbers for Louder with Crowder. And I don't bemoan that, by the way. They did the work. They're the reason we know the story. This story got out from Crowder's people. It even got into the New York Times mainstream water table. They couldn't ignore it. So that when we produce something that criticizes the left, that even the New York Times like, yeah, that's bad. That doesn't happen often on our side. So that's tremendous work by the Louder with Crowder team, but it's going to begin and end there. The audience now. But this goes to the story I'm talking about right here, which is why I interjected. The amount of audience that exists on the right, as much as the Crowder people are going to get huge engagement numbers for that video, it'll be nothing in comparison to the New York Times publishing polls today showing Trump's winning the Sun Belt states. This idea that it's just relegated to the other side, this has permeated the entire water table of America. Everybody, almost both sides, want increasingly shallow content. They want increasingly everything is racist and everybody against me is a fascist content. And we constantly want, we're actually winning, guys. Another Hollywood celeb converted, guys. The brothers be flipping, guys. Look at the polls, guys. That's really what everybody wants. Meanwhile, and the forces that are really at work in this culture, after we're distracted by all of this stuff, are really substantively moving this culture. And if it's not irrevocably to the left, we are getting close to that point. Okay. I'm not even sure I know what that point is right now. I just know it's closer than it's ever been. But that's just the reality. And for many on the right, when I spoke in Nashville on Saturday night, this is what my entire talk was about to the Cheatham County GOP. For many on the right, citizenship begins and ends with however long it takes you to vote on Election Day, which most of us probably only do every 4 years. Even a few of us do every 2 years, and very few of us do on a local level. That's my citizenship. I go vote, and then I tune into Fox, or I get on my favorite right-wing blogger and podcaster's feed, and I follow it like I'm, he's live blogging, my favorite team's ball game. But the difference is most of us aren't good enough to play for our favorite team. In this case, we're all required to be more citizens than that. But that's why this guy's going to skate. And so I'm not going to spend 15 more minutes opening my spleen on it. It is what it is. Okay? It is what it is. Nothing's going to happen. There's not nearly the market for justice as there is for tell me I'm winning. And that's a fact, Jack. Oh man, that could never happen here. It's happened here a few times in the last few years. That's why best to be prepared with our friends over at My Patriot Supply. You can save $50 on your 4-week emergency food kit, and My Patriot Supply will ship it to you as fast and free as absolutely possible. Yes, free shipping and as fast as humanly possible as well, to give you that peace of mind that well, that could never happen here. Happens here again, you are ready as well. The food stays good for up to 25 years, and it's sealed, and it's got a lot of great food options as well. Over a dozen different varieties of main dishes and sides, breakfast, lunch, dinner, even drinks and snacks, the full complement of 2,000 plus calories per day that you need. And the peace of mind, actually, that you need all the more. Available to you right now when you go to preparewithdace.com, $50 off your 4-week emergency food kit right now at preparewithdace.com. Again, where you want to go is preparewithdace.com. All right, let's welcome in our good friend Bob Vander Plaats. Good to see you there, brother. Hope you are avoiding the wasps sitting there in my assassin's seat. How you been?
I've been doing really well. So far, none of the wasps have been coming or buzzing around my head. Only Todd and Aaron have given me a bad time so far today.
All right, I know what you want to talk about today. Are you sure you want to talk about number one? Are you sure?
Well, I do want to talk about number one
it will open a can of worms. Are you sure that's a can of worms that you want to open?
Well, I think what it is, Steve, is when we get into, because you're hearing a lot of complaints. Why didn't anybody know about this? Okay.
So we're talking about Mark Robinson.
Sure.
Right. And and his, by the way, his entire senior campaign staff resigned yesterday. So that's not good. And the allegations about what is that him posting these vile things in these forums and these chat rooms. CNN laid out, there's way more detail in terms of a digital signature here than the Washington Post did when they did with Judge Roy Moore, where they essentially just said, hey, we've got these four eyewitnesses of what may or may not have happened in the late 70s to early 80s, so 40 years ago. In this case, I mean, CNN basically laid out, it's CNN, so the whole thing could be made up.
Sure.
Acknowledge that up front. But they laid out a level of specificity here, basically saying, we dare you to sue us. Now, Judge Roy Moore did sue the media, and everybody forgets he won. He won an $8.2 million defamation lawsuit, actually. And it's damn near impossible to win defamation lawsuits in America today if you're a public person. And he did win for $8.2 million. Okay. But what CNN did here in terms of traceable data and digital signatures, they laid this all out in great specificity, essentially daring the Robinson people to go down the Roy Moore track of suing them. Okay. It's CNN, so it's entirely possible they made this whole thing up. But yesterday, his senior campaign staff all resigned as well. So you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, the senior campaign staff leaving, that's not a good sign for Mark Robinson. That almost gives more credibility than the whole CNN story with all the receipts that they provided as well. But somebody's credibility is at stake. It's either Mark Robinson's at stake or it's CNN's at stake. And I can believe, but it shouldn't be that way today, that if you have any sense of journalism integrity whatsoever, that you cannot do something unless you have got this verified and verified and verified again. But in the day of AI, everybody can say, hey, that was not me. That was made up. You guys, or somebody created that stuff to make it look like me. It wasn't me. But when I look at it, Steve, I want to go beyond Mark Robinson. Because now you're in a situation where he's on the ballot regardless. And regardless if he wins the governorship in North Carolina or not, there's other concerns here about what does it do to the top of the ticket with Trump in a toss-up state like North Carolina. And Trump has been very vigorous in his endorsement of Mark Robinson, as well as he should be if he wants Mark Robinson to win. But so when people are talking to me about this, say, take Mark Robinson out of it, take all the other stuff out of it. In Iowa, we have this thing called the caucus process. And when these candidates come through who have held, by most standards, elected office of one form or another, they're a governor, they're a U.S. senator. You'll have very few like a Herman Cain or a Donald Trump or a businessman who have not held public office before. We say, going through this process is like hiring anybody at the Family Leader or on the Steve Deace Show, Veritas. And we say you need to go through the 3 C's. And the first C is character. And that means you go through their background. You go through everything that they have. Do they have the character that would earn your endorsement? And basically with character, at the end of the day, what you're saying, can I trust them? And can I trust them to lead with integrity because he or she is a person of integrity? Mm-hmm. And if you can't check off the character box, there's no reason to go to the other C's. Because the other C is competency. Are they competent to actually do the job of being governor of North Carolina? Are they capable of being president of the United States? Do they have that capacity to do that? There's a lot of people I like really well who have very strong character, but you shouldn't have them leading a state or leading a country. And then the last one's chemistry, and the chemistry one is, are they the right one for such a time as this? But Steve, it's just another day that ends in Y where we get surprised, if we want to use that word anymore, by somebody who has something in their private history, whether it be a pastor in Dallas, Texas, or whether it be a public official who's now the leading or the candidate for governor on the Republican ticket in North Carolina, or it be somebody else. And a lot of this stuff, as you know, gets done in private. And a lot of times what gets done in private will get revealed, and sometimes at the worst possible time, in public. So I'm saying our job is to do a proper job of vetting regardless of who the person is.
Number one, I think when we're all have sinned and gone
Amen.
astray. Everybody has something in their past. There's nobody that doesn't have something in their past. Everybody does.
But
Okay?
let me stop you for just a second, Steve. The difference between you with something in your past, because you've been very upfront with all the stuff you've had in your past. You've
Correct.
owned it. You've
Yep.
repented from it. And so therefore, if it gets brought up against you, like, Steve, I heard you used to be involved with pornography a lot. Yeah, let me tell you about those days. Those were dark days in my life. But
that's where I was actually going to go. To me, if you're Mark Robinson and you have a past, you've had ample opportunity to insulate yourself and you have a sympathetic story and of redemption and everything else. Mm-hmm. And that just obviously was not done here and is a complete and total miscalculation on his part. But you and I right now are working our own networks and associations and platforms to get a guy elected who's, a lot of people, there's people still in my own audience that don't think Donald Trump has the character for president. And so they don't want to vote for him. I don't even know what is the standard for it anymore. For example, is Trump's public behavior, the superiority of his policies and the impact that has on people and the betterment of their own lives, does that factor into his character? Is the failure of his marriages balanced by the fact that all of his children he's still close to them all, they're well adjusted, they're, they've had their own personal issues, but they're not showing up in Diddy videos and everything else like a lot of other celebrity kids are, and the kids that are born into the limelight, meaning that in an era where the culture is irrevocably broken, the simple formula of character that existed 40, 50 years ago that people could glom onto and grasp and understand, it's just not there anymore. And we can't even agree on what that standard is.
Well, there's no doubt about that. And matter of fact, we talked about being ministers of God, and therefore you should have the highest of standards, right? You shouldn't lower that bar, especially if you're going to be a public official who's a minister of God. With Trump, in some ways, even though he may not have repented, but he's owned most of the stuff. I remember the debate in 2016, he goes, of course I've worked this system to my advantage. I know the system exceptionally well. I know how I can work it to my advantage versus your advantage. Been very open about it. The other part about 2024 with Trump versus 2016 with Trump is he has a record. He has a record of moving the embassy to Jerusalem. He has a record of appointing 3 Supreme Court justices. He has a record of defending religious liberty. He has a lot of records that say, okay, I agree with you. And at the end of the day, it comes down to a choice. Kamala Harris, to your point, Steve, all have fallen and gone or short of God's standard. But her policies are completely reckless and against the heart of God. So therefore, that comes down to the choice. I think Mark, and first of all, Mark Robinson, in this country, you're still innocent until proven guilty. So as you said, this is CNN. Is it made up or not made up? But the fact is, if it isn't made up, he should have owned that a long time ago. It should have been revealed a long time ago, and he wouldn't have to be dealing with this stuff the way it is now. And it's not just the governorship on the line. It's North Carolina on the line for the presidency as well.
Amen to that. All right, before we get to another bullet point that you wanted to discuss from the weekend, which I am anxious to discuss as well, a word about our friends over at Hillsdale College. They continue to add resources to help you defend your values and principles because they are leaders on the battlefield of education when it comes to defending liberty there. And you can check out now the Hillsdale College Podcast Network, whether it's the Larry Arnn Show, the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, their online courses podcast. These are all top-notch. You'll find them on all major podcast platforms. They're excellent while taking a walk or driving to work. And you'll also find them when you go to daceforhillsdale.com. Find your new, we hope maybe at least second favorite behind us. Second favorite podcast when you go to daceforhillsdale.com. Look for the Hillsdale College Podcast Network there. Dace4, F-O-R, daceforhillsdale.com. Again, head over to daceforhillsdale.com. So this weekend, did some speaking in Nashville. Didn't get to watch as much football as I typically do, but the bits that I did watch this weekend, Bob, there were everywhere attack ads against Mariannette Miller Meeks, a congresswoman from here in Iowa. And for people that don't know, she's the one she's, by the way, Mariannette Miller Meeks has been running for Congress basically much of my adult life. Okay. I mean, she's, how many times, I think it took her 4 chances, right, before she finally won her seat. Yeah. And then she won about like 100 votes and they tried stealing it from her, right? If I remember right, that's the story.
8
right?
votes.
8 votes.
Yeah.
It was even closer than I thought. Right. Okay. And for those of us that have known her, I've known the woman for almost 20 years and she's never been pro-life. She's a doctor. She's never been pro-life, ever. And one of the reasons why she struggled to win a lot is she thought the best way to win kind of a purplish district, which is where she originally was to resent people like me and you. And that pro-life Christians had way too much influence in the party and everything else, right? Okay. Somehow, some way, I have no idea how, because I've known the woman for almost 20 years, and she's never been pro-life. Somehow, some way, she got some 100% grade from the Susan B. Anthony list. All right, so this is the whole, big baby thing. Just get an R after your name. Doesn't matter who you really are, what you really think. You get your pro-life We Below badge to go out there and fool all the Christians. You've heard me railing against this for as long as you and I have known each other, Bob. Right? Okay. Well, the great irony of that scam is it's going to probably cost Mariannette Miller Meeks her congressional seat. Frankly, she is getting destroyed. I mean, it was in every game I watched, pro in college, and I wasn't like long form other than the Lions game. I was tuning in and out from the road. And I couldn't get even on digital YouTube TV. She was in every commercial break I saw this weekend, getting annihilated for wanting to ban all abortions. And nothing could be further from the truth, actually. Okay, just getting annihilated, which the whole thing is deceptive. It's dishonest. It's not who she is. It's also deliciously ironic, Bob. Okay.
Well, when you take a look
it's
at
also
it,
that.
It definitely is, because Miller Meeks, I don't think anybody really knows what she is other than she's made a political calculation. In order to win in that district, you can't be 100% pro-life. So therefore, this is one of those districts we look at and go, well, if she's 60 or 80% with us, that's better than the one who's going to be 0% with us, right? But what she's learning is what Kim Reynolds learned several years ago, she told me, is that she's going to get attacked regardless. So why not lead with bold and courageous? No more plaid pastels is what Reagan called it. Why not raise the flag of bold conservatism high and lead that way? Miller Meeks has not been able to do that, but what she's been able to find out now is that Bohannon, her opponent, Christine Bohannon, is just labeling her as an extreme pro-life congresswoman. Nothing could be further from the truth, but she's still owning it. And what they're trying to do, Steve, they're trying to bait her into saying, no, I'm not all that pro-life. I have a lot of exceptions, and I'm more pro-choice than you think I am. And all of a sudden, now you dampen your own base. So Christine Bohannon and a Democrat isn't a win-win here. Either she has to own what she's accusing her of, or she has to disavow what she's accusing her of, which will dampen her own base. That's still a very, very tough district for her to win. It's going to be a very close race. But I think all politicians could learn something from this. As you said, Donald Trump cannot run away from appointing 3 Supreme Court justices that led to the overturn of Roe v. Wade. They're going to accuse him of being the most pro-life extreme president ever. In the same way now, Miller Meeks. But with what Kim Reynolds said, they're going to attack me anyhow. So why don't they attack me for doing the right thing? Signing the heartbeat bill, the religious liberty bill, the school choice bill, other stuff. Attack me for doing the right thing.
The irony of watching Mariannette Miller Meeks try 20 years to win a congressional seat and lose it over the very issue she has tried to betray throughout the entirety of that 20 years. And because she was given an accommodation by the pro-life industry she never earned and never believed. That's the entire, and meanwhile, we're probably going to lose every amendment in the country other than Florida right now, okay? And we're only going to win that probably because it requires 60%. Whatever this thing has been, okay, over all these years, which basically overturned Roe by accident and then had no post-Roe v. Wade plan. And then to see Mariannette Miller Meeks just watch her, it's almost like divine kind of stuff, Bob, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, the ads are forcing her to take a position right now. So we'll see what she does with it, but you're right. These ads are brutal against her.
And you might as well, if you're going to get credited with the magic R, you might, as Bob just said, you might as well be sincerely pro-life because they're going to label you all like that anyway. And at least you would get some kind of bounce from our base of enthusiasm in response. Or you can just keep losing like Mariannette Miller Meeks, where you're in a no man's land, where you're not going to get that extra layer of pro-life, convicted voter for you while getting accused of being deserving of that support you won't get anyway from the other side. I'll give you the last word.
Well, the last word is I want to go to another ad, and that is when I was watching the Iowa-Minnesota game, and Kamala Harris runs an ad in Iowa. And you and I talked about that poll, and we believe it's a narrative poll and those type of things. But I think is she taking a page out of Hillary Clinton's playbook and saying, I'm going to start playing in areas that really aren't mine, but I'm going to try to expand the map. If she does that, I believe she's wasting resources. I believe it gives an advantage to Trump. And a reminder to all the pastors out there, because I had a lot of your listeners email us, go to choosewell2024.com. Get your resources there on how you can engage your congregation biblically to make a difference in this election.
Give that website out one more time.
choosewell2024.com. choosewell2024.com.
choosewell2024.com is where you want to go. That's choosewell2024.com. All right, brother. Thank you very much. Good to see you again as always. Appreciate you.
Good to see you. God bless.
Thank you. Same to you. All right, we'll come back. We're going to try to separate fact from fiction as best we can. Tiffany Justice from Moms for Liberty just got back from being on the ground in Springfield, Ohio. And then later in the hour, what to make of these early voting numbers in Pennsylvania. We'll get to that too here next. Stay tuned. Greetings, back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todders and Aaron McIntyre and all of you, and you can let us know what you think about what we think. Take advantage of the stevedeace.com inbox multiple ways by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And again, the last name is DEACE. If you listen via the podcast, thanks. You're a big part of our audience. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a 5-star review to let everybody know how much you love the show, we would appreciate that, as we appreciate the tens of thousands of you that already have across multiple platforms. We're approaching 10,000 on iTunes, so let's keep that going, please. And then also hit subscribe, or if you listen via iTunes, follow, and that will assure that every time we do one of these new episodes for you, it shows up in your feed for you every single time. And this part of the show brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Academy. I've got a special announcement for you folks. This is an opportunity for you to get to me and Daniel and America's Constitution coach, Rick Green, all together. November 16th through the 18th down in Fredericksburg, Texas. We're hosting a special 3-day constitutional defense course at the Patriot Academy campus just outside of Fredericksburg there. If you want to join us for fellowship and discussion, in a class that's revitalizing firearms training and also constitutional discipleship and coaching as well, we'd love to see you down there. All right, you can register by going to patriotacademy.com/Steve. Again, you can register by going to patriotacademy.com/Steve. One more time, that's patriotacademy.com/Steve. All right. We have been unable to connect with Tiffany Justice, so we will try to reschedule her because we definitely want to know what she saw on the ground there in Springfield. At the bottom of the hour, I'm going to take you through some of the early voting numbers in Pennsylvania and what to and what to not make of them. I've got some other numbers I want to discuss, though, now, and that has to do with gender gaps. I think it is entirely possible that we could be looking at something that's never something that's never happened in American history before. Simultaneous record gender gaps of men and women. And when I mentioned at the top of the show, when you go to each side's, so you go to our side and their side. Okay, I'm not, we're not above it all. We're in the mess here. We're on the side here on this show. We are recognizing we are in a cold civil war. Now, we're not going to sell our souls. If we don't think something is true or right, we'll say so. But short of that, we're heavily invested in the outcome here, given what's at stake in the country. And when you look at both sides on X, each side is finding all kinds of things in these polls that they like. You know why? Because there's all kinds of things in all these polls for each side to like. I mean, look at Aaron's montage earlier today. If I am the commie law for president campaign, and I see Scott Rasmussen has us winning independence by 5, I'm measuring the drapes at 1,600. Now, actually, I don't have to do that. I'm probably running the country already anyway, but you know what I'm saying. Okay. On the other hand, if I'm the Trump campaign and the New York Times Siena College poll, which has proven to just hate me and essentially be a psyop against me for the entirety of my political ascendancy, and even they've got me sweeping the Sun Belt right at about the margin of error / margin for cheating in each one of those states, which would really help my prospects in the Electoral College map. Because, if you look at the Electoral College map, like an NCAA tournament bracket for our side, the Sun Belt states are the regional. And if we don't win the Sun Belt states, we don't get to the Final Four, and that's where Pennsylvania's at. Pennsylvania is the Final Four. That's where the road ends there. But we got to win the Sun Belt states to get there. They don't have to win any Sun Belt states. It would help them immensely. But as long as they hold serve in the Rust Belt states, which they've done in every election since '88, even ones they've lost, except for 2016, that was the one time that that those 3 Sun Belt states went against them. Since 1988, they've voted together. They sweep all of those. They win. That puts Kamala at 270 or above, regardless of what happens elsewhere. With one possible caveat, there's now some talk that maybe Nebraska may try here at the last minute now that it's past the deadline for Maine to do it, because the reason Nebraska didn't do it earlier this year is because Maine said they would stop splitting their Electoral College votes if Nebraska did, but now the deadline for Maine has passed, and so there's some talk that maybe Nebraska is going to attempt to at the last minute have all of its Electoral College votes go in one block, which Trump would then win rather than losing the one out of Omaha. If they can do that, then it's possible that Kamala, even if she swept the Rust Belt, would only get to 269, depending on what happened like in Nevada. Okay? But as of right now today, Kamala does not need any of the Sun Belt states. That's North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. She does not need any of them to get to 270. Trump cannot get to 270 without them. It's not entirely impossible, but it's essentially impossible. Okay. I mean, it's not entirely possible. If you're down by 25 at halftime, you can come back and win. It's virtually impossible. I mean, maybe it happens a handful of times a year, and there's in college basketball, and there's 331 teams. So we could be looking at something where every day each side gets stories that completely confirm their narrative. So Scott Rasmussen says Kamala is going to win independence by 5. New York Times, Siena College says Trump's going to sweep the Sun Belt as of today, which is great news for the Trump campaign if they were able to do that. And I think that the reason why, even if, well, let's assume there's a psyop factor to virtually everything. But if you guys want me to have everything be a psyop, I can't do a show for you. Okay? I mean, Steve, give me analysis on nothing that's real. I don't know how to do that. Maybe other people do. And if so, the Blaze would have to replace me with them. I don't know how to give you a show if everything's a psyop and nothing is real. Okay? So, not to mention, I just don't think that's how spiritual warfare works. It assumes the devil has dominion. He does not. Well, Steve, we're in an era eschatologically where I believe the prince of the power of the air, that the earth is his kingdom. Even if you believe that, he didn't take it from anybody. God is sovereign, not him. God is transcendent, not him. So take it from someone who spent 3 years doing spiritual warfare to get a movie made about spiritual warfare, and it nearly cost me my life twice. I can tell you just as many stories that would encourage you and white pill you and fire you up about seeing how the Lord acts when he wills to do so, as I could stories that would creep you out, say I don't want to hear anymore, and black pill you. It's a two-way street. That's why we call it a spiritual war, not a spiritual rout. So I don't even think it's true that everything's a psyop anyway. God doesn't do psyops. God does clarity, certainty. God wants to be known, wants truth to be known. So sometimes we'll say we think that's a psyop. Sometimes we'll say we're not sure. But ultimately, because there's a faction of you, and it varies. And I don't blame any of you when I say this, by the way, because I'm in all your camps simultaneously. I don't know sometimes either what's real and what's not, man. I don't know. What I do think is real is that there's going to be a lot of days, the next 43 days, where simultaneously both sides are going to like the news cycle. And there's going to be a lot of those days. Today's one of those days. And I think one of the reasons why that isn't necessarily a psyop, although the reasons for it could be psyop involved when you start talking about things like feminism, for example. But I think it is very possible we may have, for the first time in American history, simultaneously, the largest male and female gender gaps in terms of hitting at the same time. What the difference in these two camps are. For example, again, both sides have a narrative. When you hear someone on the right lament, really worried about the female gender gap, someone else on the right will, show a graphic that says they should be worried about the male gender gap. And they should. It works both ways. They should. Let's look at the history of these gender gaps for a second. And this is research I've done that goes back to 1980, so a full generation, 1980 to 2020. And there's a couple of trend lines you're going to see here, regardless of who wins. Number one, 1980, the overall electorate was +2 men. That's the last time in America that men were the majority of voters in an election, 1980. Reagan won the men by 17. He won women by 1. 1984, look how things flip in just 4 years. The females dominate the electorate. They are +6 overall in the electorate. Reagan wins men by 24. He won women by 16. So Ronald Reagan, the first pro-life candidate for national office in American history, won women in both of his elections. Because you're going to hear people say stuff when they see this kind of data. Repeal the 19th. We had the 19th Amendment in the 80s too, guys. Ronald Reagan was doing evil empire speeches at the national religious broadcasters and writing books, the abortion and the conscience of a nation. We had the 19th Amendment in the 80s too. It's always the culture. It's never the laws. It's always the culture, never the laws. 1988, women are +4 of the overall electorate. Again, Bush wins them both. Bush wins men by 16. He wins women by 2. 1992, women are +6 of the overall electorate. Bill wins men by 3, and then he wins women by 7. Obviously, that's the Ross Perot election. That's why those numbers are a little bit down, because he's winning a significant portion of each of those two groups too, getting about 20% nationwide. 1996, women are +4 of the overall electorate. Dole wins men by 1. Bubba wins women by 17. By 17. 2000, women again +4 of the overall electorate. Bush won men by 11. Gore won women by 10. And that's how you end up in an election right there. That's by hanging chads. About 500 some odd votes in the state of Florida decided the whole thing. Because you see that level of polarization. We're heading to something like that in this election, by the way. 2004, women +8 in the overall electorate. Bush wins men by 12. Kerry wins women by 3. But when you see that, that's the highest turnout of women dominating a presidential election in history in 2004. Also the last time Republicans won the national popular vote. 2008, women are +6 of the overall electorate. Obama wins men by 1, wins women by 13. 2012, again, they're +6 of the overall electorate. Romney wins men by 7. Obama wins women by 11. 2016, women are +4 of the overall electorate. Trump wins men by 11. Clinton wins women by 13. 2020, women again are +4 of the overall electorate. Trump wins men by 8. Biden wins women by 15. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind before we break down these numbers. Remember, we don't have a national election. We have 50 state elections, right? So some of you might be thinking, well, I mean, how does George W. Bush win the national popular vote when he's losing women by 3 and it's +8 of the overall electorate, and then he's women? Sometimes the math will seem incongruent in the top line because did Bush just turn out a bunch of women against him in like California or Illinois where he couldn't win? Okay, so those are things to keep in mind. It's not a seamless garment here, okay? Sometimes, and you're dealing with exit polling, okay? And this is research I've done in exit polling going back 40 years, and there's margins for error here too. So these aren't the hard numbers. I didn't go precinct level and count all these votes, and that data wouldn't be available for anything prior to 2000 or 2004 anyway. So you're dealing with exit polling, so we have margins of error here of 3 or 4 points, right? So look at these as ranges more than constants. We're in strong approximations here. I am seeing polling where Trump is going to lose women by 20, 25. I am seeing polling where Trump is going to win men by 10, 15, maybe even greater than the margin he won them by in 2016 when he won. Well, when it was acknowledged that he won. And I think this entire thing comes down, and I don't think anything's going to change that, by the way. I just don't. I don't. I think it is possible we will lose every abortion amendment in the country other than Florida. I think that's possible. And Florida is only going to be because DeSantis went all in against it and they have to get to 60%. Now, Kristi Noem is speaking out against the one in her state. So hopefully she puts her thumb on the scale like Ron has. But as of today, if you made me pick, if you put the Wonder Woman lasso of truth around me, I would say we're going to lose them all other than Florida. Now, we're not voting today. We are in some places. But it's going to take a lot more. It's going to take the Missouri Republican Party doing what Ron DeSantis is making the Florida Republican Party do. And it's going to take the same thing in South Dakota and the rest of these states. Because without it, they're all going to win. I think this entire election for the next 6 weeks, barring something organic that we cannot yet predict, like I mentioned last week, something that either we will be permitted to see, like a Comey letter, or not permitted to see, like Hunter Biden's laptop, that happens in the waning moments of this campaign, I think will ultimately determine it. But there's no way for me to predict something like that. I'm not a prophet, capital P. I can't see into the future. I can just see meteorological conditions for something like that. But in terms of the structure of what we can see and know right now, I think that this election will come down to two things. One, you're seeing an exact same bifurcation of polarization between whites that have college degrees and whites that don't. Where Kamala's winning whites with college degrees by 20, Trump is winning whites that don't have college degrees by about the same margin. So what's the turnout of those two groups? And there's just no way that we would know that. Because remember, it's not just the slice of the pie, it's the size of the pie that you took the slice from. Right? So I mean, if Trump, wins whites without a college degree by 25 and Kamala wins whites with college degrees by 22, but whites with college degrees are +3, +4 more of the overall turnout than whites without, she makes up for it in raw numbers. And there's just no way to know that. You couldn't possibly know that answer. So we'll play it out on game day. We don't know. But that's the one group whose bifurcation I think will matter and whose total turnout number will matter. I just don't think at this point there is anything that the Trump campaign can do to meaningfully make up ground when it comes to whites with college degrees. Unless it's something organic that we cannot yet predict that threatens them on a personal level to see beyond their disdain for Trump. Similarly, I don't think there's anything Kamala could do to make up for the balkanization that exists with her among whites without college degrees either. So I think that's bone on bone, no cartilage there. Second is the turnout of this electorate, because women are going to turn out more. So is it +4 women, like 2016? Do these abortion amendments make it +6, +8? Because you get back to the same thing. If it's the same gender gap both ways, or even if Trump performs better with men than Kamala does with women, and so Trump's gender gap is +21, and just making up numbers here to make an example, and plus Kamala's +17, but women are +6 of the electorate overall, gulp. And at this point, I don't think there's anything either side could do to move any of those numbers, barring organic events that threatens people to get outside of the current position they're embedded within. So let's pause on these numbers for a second. There's other things that I think that you could infer from these numbers as well. Let's give you a minute to digest them, and Todd and Aaron to do the same, because I'm going to turn it over to them in a second. After I tell you about our friends over at Focus on the Family, when we're done here, I know a lot of you are going to be like, hey man, there's multiple battlefronts out there. And is there a place we can go to get some practical tips on, how to keep our marriage and our family on the narrow road? Well, Focus on the Family has been doing that for marriages and families pretty much for as long as all three of us doing this show have been alive. The latest iteration, which is Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, connects you to biblically sound advice on marriage and parenting that strives to be relatable, practical, and genuinely interesting as well. You can listen, learn, apply, and thrive in Christ, and do so, making a difference in your family's life today. If you go to the website, you can get the podcast, Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, DALY. FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com is where you can go. FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com, again, is where you can go. That's FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com. All right, guys, laying these numbers out, your thoughts.
I'm actually thinking a lot about last Friday in a letter you read about from somebody complaining about women vis-a-vis marriage. But it just keeps echoing my brain, and you talk about every election since the initial one in Reagan. We just forget this election for a second. Every election moving forward is a problem based on the men of this country. They have clearly, not just as it relates to relationship, they've just given up overall. That's what I see, election after election after election. It shouldn't be this way. It fundamentally should not be this way. It's not like we have a narrow band of margin of like, who else would we get to turn out? There's just a lot of men who are at least uninterested, or as I've said before, just resent having to be involved. I can't get past that. And until we start asking questions about that, just like oftentimes when we talk about race relations and we don't talk, the last thing the press is going to talk about is out of wedlock birth rate, things of that nature. Here on the right, this is something clearly we won't look in the eye, because I think the answer hits too close to home with too many people who are kind of sort of involved. Like you said earlier on the show, they'll show up to the polling place, but other than that, their level of civic involvement is a fat zero. This is not. It doesn't even matter if Trump wins this election. This is a civilization killer, is what you're showing. That destiny, election after election after election, of showing women dominating turnout like this. It goes nowhere good.
So there's an NBC News poll that came out yesterday that showed Kamala Harris winning women 58 to 37, Trump winning men 52 to 40%. Some lefty I saw this morning responded to that poll and said, quote, "America has a white, stupid man problem." Now, of course, from his perspective, he means it in terms of, I just hate the whiteness of your skin.
Yes, because they're voting Trump.
But the sports, yes, correct.
Yeah.
But the sports bro, from the sports bro perspective.
You bet. He's right.
He's got it right.
Yeah.
Just from the wrong premise. The fact that women have outrepresented men just in the act of voting. Guys, let's just go through the act of voting. Okay. Everybody's busy. I'm busy. You're busy. He's busy. She's busy. Everybody's busy. Everybody's got their jobs. Everybody's got errands to run after school. I get it. But let's just go through the action of voting. Okay. You get in your car. You go to a polling place that is maybe within, I don't know, maybe it's bigger in big cities, but it's probably within 10 to 15 minutes from your house, right?
Yeah.
10 to 15 minutes of your house max. You go in there, you spend 5 minutes filling out a ballot. You submit it, and then you go home, or you go on to the next stop. The whole process, you know, if you do it early, or if you go at the right time of the day, if you have to stand in line, it might take a while, yeah. But actually voting, it doesn't really take that much effort. Okay, you're going to be on your phone checking your fantasy team. You're going to be on your phone making your bets for Maction on a Tuesday in November. Okay, it's not that you're not like moving. You're not moving heaven and earth to go vote. It's pretty easy. And men just cannot be bothered. Election after election after election after election. That's a civilization, as Todd was alluding to, a civilizational killer there. We can't even be bothered to get up and vote en masse, or at least to equalize it with the women. That says it all.
I think you see two things in the numbers I just cited, you guys are touching on them, that have a symbiotic relationship and go together. You are seeing the overall success of third wave feminism and the emasculation of men, the collapse of masculinity in America, the collapse of the father in America, of male role models in America. You're witnessing that. Okay. In 1988, it was still uncommon for the father figure in a sitcom to be portrayed as some kind of an idiot or a moron, someone that was only going to do the right thing if manipulated, was threatened by his wife's side eye, or denied sex by his wife if he didn't man up. By 1996, that was, except for shows like Home Improvement, that was already pretty much the norm.
Because it's real life.
It was at least foreshadowing of the era we're in now. And these two things go together, all right? Are men emasculated by feminism, or is feminism a response to the emasculation of men who are unworthy of many women? And the answer, of course, if you've raised sons and daughters, as I have, let me tell you what the answer to that question is. What do you guys think it is? Yes, is the answer. They go together. We were meant to go together. We complement one another, okay? They go together. One does not happen in a vacuum. This becomes a chicken or the egg argument. Okay, they go together, and so you see the overall success of third wave feminism in these moments, and you see that it takes something extraordinary, like fear of my family's security post 9/11, for that concrete to even be dented on any level at all. It takes something extraordinary like that. And at the same time, the men have just largely checked out. And this is why we focus on men on this show. Ultimately, the men are the Rosetta Stone key here. They're the skeleton key to fix this entire thing. Because they're also what broke it. But I can't sit here and tell you. I don't know. I have no clue if women will be +5 or +9 of the turnout. I just know that women are going to be the majority of the turnout. And if they're +4 or 5, Trump can win. If they're +6 or higher, probably not. And I have no idea what the ratio of turnout between non-college educated whites will be compared to college educated whites. It also matters that where do these college-educated whites that even if Kamala wins them by the huge margin she likely will, but are the college-educated whites, does she win them in California by the same margin she wins them in North Carolina? Because again, we don't have just one national election, right? We have 50 statewide elections, and this is why Karl Rove made sure 20 years ago to put a marriage amendment on the ballot in a state like Ohio that Bush had to win because he knew it would drive up his side's turnout. And it's why they're placing now kill 'em all amendments in every state they can, because they know that'll drive up their side's turnout. Which is why when we run from an issue like this, you face the double whammy. Their side's going to turn out. But when we run from that kind of a flash or that kind of a fight and that kind of an issue, we then don't maximize our side's turnout to try to at least offset some of the max turnout of theirs. All right, let's talk about Pennsylvania when we come back. If you're going online without ExpressVPN, that's like leaving your laptop unattended at a coffee shop while you run to the bathroom. Most of the time, you're probably fine, but what if one day you come out of the bathroom and your laptop is gone? Every time you connect to an unencrypted network in cafes, hotels, airports, etc., your online data is not secure. Any hacker on the same network can gain access to and steal your personal data. That includes passwords, bank logins, credit card details, etc. It doesn't take much technical knowledge to hack someone. Just some cheap hardware is needed. Maybe even a smart 12-year-old could do it. Your data is valuable. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per person selling it onto the dark web. That's why ExpressVPN stops hackers from stealing your data by creating a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. So if you want to secure your online data today, by the way, I mean, my wife just told me an hour ago, someone tried to get access to my debit card. And just yesterday, it was just expired. And just yesterday, I swapped it out for the new one. And so it got flagged right away. Otherwise, we'd be dealing with that hassle today.
Similar thing just happened to me this morning.
Wow.
Somebody's attacking the Steve Deace show, I think.
No doubt. Well, we've seen some examples of that, haven't we? So there you go. There's a testimonial from Aaron and I both right now here in the last 24 hours. So go to expressvpn.com/Steve. Get an extra 3 months for free. When you do, sign up for a year, get an extra 3 months for free. So 15 months for the price of 12 at Express, EXPRESSV as in victory, PN as in private network. Expressvpn.com/Steve. You can do that today at expressvpn.com/Steve. All right, another audible, because we were able to connect with Tiffany Justice at Moms for Liberty. We have her now via the phone lines, and I definitely, we will discuss that Pennsylvania stuff here soon, but I definitely want to know what Tiffany saw when she was on the ground there recently in Springfield, Ohio. So let's welcome her to the show. Tiffany, glad we were finally able to connect. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on today.
All right, so Tiffany, tell us about, you went to Springfield. How long were you there? What did you do there? Who did you talk to?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough that Vivek Ramaswamy asked me to join him in Springfield. I knew that he was planning on going. You know, he is from Ohio. He grew up about an hour away from Springfield. He's been to Springfield a lot growing up. He played tennis there at the college, Wittenberg College. And so he's very familiar with the area. And he said he was going, and I expressed an interest in going, and he let me come with him, which was great. So I flew in and got to meet some of the people in Springfield, got to have some conversations. And then the next day, Vivek and I went to City Hall. And we got to sit down with the mayor, with the city manager, with a council member, a city council member. We also got to sit down and speak to 4 Haitian immigrants who told us their story of how they came to be in Springfield and what life has been like for them. And then that night, I moderated a town hall for Vivek with a couple hundred people in the room, 300 people. There was massive overflow room, and then there were probably 1,000 people outside that had wanted to come in. And we got to hear directly from the residents of Springfield about how an increase of 20,000 people into their small community of about 58,000 now has affected their lives.
What did you hear is going on there, and what did you hear is not going on there, Tiffany?
Yeah. So, I mean, what we heard was going on there is the fact that you have people that have this temporary protection status. That, you know, after the earthquake in Haiti, the federal government set up a program where people could come and come into the United States and have a temporary protected status as an immigrant here, as a legal immigrant in America. And the question really was, you know, how did everyone find their way to Springfield, right? Has it been manufactured? Have NGOs been a part of it? Have private companies been a part of it? Was it word of mouth, which is what, you know, many of the Haitians actually said, that there was quite a bit of word of mouth happening as well. But what did we hear that was happening? We heard that the services are strained, that the hospitals are having trouble keeping up, that the schools are having trouble, that you have a massive amount of people, again, that don't speak the English language that are trying to navigate. We heard about issues about safety on the roads, a lot of people that are 18 coming in and getting a driver's license and not really having any experience driving, and how the roads have been unsafe. You know, what we didn't hear, obviously, we did not hear that, you know, anyone's pets were being eaten, but we did hear that community services are being strained, and that people's lives are very much being affected by it, and that they're very hurt and upset about the fact that it seems like there's this very quick rush to judgment to call them racist or to not want the Haitians living there. And that wasn't the case. It was just that they felt, and really the Haitians too, and I hope we get to talk about this today, you know, that there are some very, very bad federal policies, and that city government, local government, and the people of the United States are just dealing with the fallout from the federal government pushing people into America.
All right, let's talk about it. Let's go there now. Illuminate on that issue for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So we sat down with the 4 Haitian immigrants and we chatted with them a little bit. One of the questions that I asked, and let me just say, first of all, Vivek is a very talented man. He did an excellent job setting up meetings. He obviously has a lot of respect in the community and in Ohio overall. When someone asked him during the town hall, would you think about running for governor? And literally the room erupted. People got on their feet and were cheering and clapping. I think people very much want to have their voices heard, and they haven't felt that's been happening in Ohio, certainly not with their governor and not with their local government. Now, to be fair, I think the local government is somewhat overwhelmed. Vivek said during the town hall he felt that it wasn't that the people didn't want to be there, but that they're scared. And I think they are scared because, again, they're dealing with a huge influx of people and trying to meet the demands of everyone in the community. The Haitian immigrants, it was a sad story. It was 4 adults, probably somewhere between their 30s and 40s, who really shared the fact that none of their children are living here in America with them. One of the gentlemen was a doctor in Haiti, and he shared the fact that in Haiti, if you're a professional and you're working and you're considered to have money, that these little gangs, and it's not just one big gang, but they're small groups of gangs, will try to kidnap you and hold you hostage and demand ransom if they think that you have money or if you're a professional. And so he was actually safer, and his family was safer with him living in the United States than living in Haiti. A horrible situation. And when you hear that, you know, he left when his fiancée was 6 months pregnant and his child is now 3, and has never met his child. It's heartbreaking. And again, the other 3 people too, all of their children in Haiti living here, trying to support themselves, sending money back to Haiti. The federal government policies have allowed people to come in to the United States of America, but what it seems to be is that there are a lot of people, private industry, that has taken advantage of the fact that we do have this influx of immigrants that are coming in that are looking for work. And so I know that there are a lot of great reporters on the ground right now. Azra Namani is writing for the Jewish Journal right now, actually. She's a reporter who used to be with the Wall Street Journal, and if you want to follow her, you can see some of the investigative reporting that she's doing. But just overwhelmingly, the citizens of Springfield are hurt and sad. They don't feel that their city council members have heard them, that are listening to them and their concerns. They wanted to know why people weren't there. And I agree with Vivek. I think that there's a large amount of fear by elected officials to kind of stand right now and to try to find solutions and a way forward. But that is absolutely what we need. We need the federal government to stop pushing people into America. And we need local government, mayors, city council members to stand up and say, enough, no more. Our cities can't take this.
Your big takeaway, Tiffany, after spending some time there and hearing from people on the ground there, your big takeaway moving forward is what? And how does it differ maybe from what you thought going in?
Yeah, I mean, I felt so just heartbreak for the Haitian immigrants that are coming. They just want a better life. And America is this beacon of hope. My big takeaway was the fact that we are a nation in decline right now. I know President Trump has said it. We're seeing it very directly. And our systems and our services are failing. They're failing on their own. And then when you have this influx of immigrants, and, one of the people stood up and they said, we don't care where the people are from. They could be from Haiti. They could be from Sweden. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that we have this huge influx of people coming into our community and putting a strain on the services. This is what's happening in Springfield is happening all over the United States of America, whether it's legal immigration, whether it's illegal immigration, or whether it's just the fact that our institutions are failing and that they're not really doing what the people need and want. The big takeaway is that we need to take a hard look at the services that are being provided across the United States. We need to figure out how to prioritize those, and we need to figure out how to make America first again, put America first again, because if America falls, if we're not a place that can be a refuge, then, the beacon of light is gone. Where will we go? There is nowhere for Americans to go. And there are so many countries around the United States that are looking to us, around the world that are looking at America to lead. And so I was thankful that Vivek brought me. I was thankful to kind of get a feel on the ground for what's happening, especially in the schools. Where you can just see, one of the solutions that the city government had decided they would do to try to help the schools was they were going to give $250,000 for, wait for it, a school-based health clinic. And so once again, we're seeing our schools in the United States being turned into social welfare centers rather than places of education. And we know that as that continues to happen, that we're going to continue to see a decline in reading, writing, and math scores. And so the time is now for us to stand up and to take our country back.
Tiffany, appreciate your report. Thank you for being diligent, because this is stuff our audience definitely needed to hear. And thank you for going there and seeing what was going on there for yourself. We really appreciate that and the work your organization does. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Gentlemen, have any thoughts on what you just heard there from Tiffany Justice from Moms for Liberty after being in Springfield, Ohio for herself?
Well, it's there's a both and aspect to this. In the cat memes and things like that, there's never knew what percentage of the population was involved in anything like that. Whatever percentage it was too much. But there was always going to be another aspect of this. Perhaps the vast majority of that population that did come here with the American dream in their heart, escaping whatever persecution they had, wanted something better, just like Tiffany painted. Now, that was bound to overrun any system. It's it's overrunning New York City. It's overrunning Springfield, Ohio. But for all of the cat meme stories that came out, here's the flip side, and it connects directly with what we talked about last half hour. There is more America dream in the hearts of whether they're Haitians or all kind of people escaping what they come over, want something better, than in many fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth generation Americans who have put this whole thing on cruise control. And like I said, just resent having to be involved at all. Don't plan on doing a damn thing. I'm glad Tiffany spoke up to that aspect of things, because once again, the men in this country are the problem. The election issue that we have was going to happen to us even without Haitian immigrants coming over. This just exacerbates a problem that, quite frankly, right now is our destiny, and it's a bad one.
Yeah. So in terms of kind of the big picture view, I mean, we've always espoused this on this show, that not all cultures are equal, and that Haiti is a failed state. By any account, they are kind of a failed people. Is it this generation's of Haiti's fault that that is the case? No, they were born into this. They don't know any different. So are they victims here? Well, they're taking advantage of an opportunity for them. So in that sense, no. But they're also, as Tiffany spoke to, they're being treated like chattel, basically. Hey, cheap labor, government programs, bring them on in here. It's just the entire, and the people of Springfield who preceded them, they are being treated as expendable. Chattel, expendable. The entire situation is wicked. I don't know how you come to grasp with anything other than that. And it's predicated on a number of things, but in this particular instance, it's just cheap labor, and a city council, seemingly, who's willing to cut deals to bring in a large influx of foreigners to fill those shoes. It's just wicked.
Here's the thing. If the standard is these are just people looking for a better life, then we just have to let the whole world in.
Correct.
Because everybody not living here would find a better life here. There's nowhere else to go. Even in our diminished state, there is no better place to live or make a living than here. So there must be a standard beyond these people just want a better life. Then we just have to let the whole world in then. That's not a standard. So what should the standard then be? And one side says that's their claim for what they're doing anyway. That's the left's claim for what they're doing here. These are just people who want a better life. Okay, well, I'm thinking, how about they want a better life where you live? Why is it got to be a better life where you don't? I mean, the wealthiest demographics have been voting Democrat since Obama. So if the standard is just they want a better life, shouldn't they then be shipped to the places where the Obama, Kamala, Hillary Clinton voters are? Because they're the wealthiest voters among us, guys. They're living in the best places. If the standard is just they want a better life, put them in the best places then. That's not a standard. There has to be some kind of standard. This idea that you have no say at all in who gets to move into your town in mass. We're not talking about individual families of immigrants. We're talking a massive wave of people. And this idea you have no say at all about that as a citizen, as a taxpayer, just goes against the very fabric of a broken social, of what a vibrant and unbroken social compact is supposed to look like. You do stuff to this, like this, to people that you don't want to be in social compact with anymore. And they don't want to be, the left, they don't want to be in social compact with the Haitian immigrants either, which is why they're not shipping them to where they live. They're shipping people they don't want to be in social compact with to the communities of people they don't want to be in social compact with. Can you do that math? That's what's going on here. So the talking point, they just want a better life, is a fallacy. By that standard, we'd have to let the entire planet in, because this is the best place on the planet to live. That's not a standard. There has to be something more than that. But there is no other standard. And the standard is hand over your entire way of life or get called a racist. That's not any form of fair exchange whatsoever. And here's what you need to understand. It's not meant to be. It's not meant to be. These people don't care about the Haitian immigrants. They're a means to an end. Like Todd likes to say, the lie is the point. Because they don't care about these people at all.
The left has a way of life. Our side doesn't have a way of life. What is that? I'd like to know. It's not.
They are being sent to your communities on purpose to break you. And it's way more. If we send a jackbooted thug in a brown shirt, you can message against that. But you're going to do this to people with brown skin and be called a racist? You have no way of messaging against that. So you're trapped. And that's the point. The trap is the point. Romans 8:28.